Hey Mo, how's it going?
Good. What's up, Jeffrey?
Today we're going to talk about some Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
All right, I'm excited for this game. It's one of my favorites.
Wonderful, yeah. All right, so we're gonna go over some of the issues with the game, not in the actual game mechanics or anything like that, but sort of the sexism that exists and it has existed within other Assassin's Creed titles that led into this.
Ooh,
So,
that's really interesting. I'm
yeah.
excited to explore.
All right, so first I want to start off by saying there is a remarkable existence of sexism in Assassin's Creed, although it did take steps away from games preceding it, such as Unity and other ones.
Mm-hmm.
But blatantly, this game can be pretty sexist in some senses of some things like enemies, skills, stuff like that. So where did you want to start off today, Mo?
Well, first, I wanted to say thank you for getting the gameplay up. Thank you for setting this up. I want to say thank you to Professor Cody for allowing us to review this game. And diving straight into the gameplay and the game itself, to be honest with you, Jeffrey, before discovering Dr. Cody's DMS 448, Codes, Gender, and Games, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe that was the title.
Games, gender, and culture is the name of
Yes,
this.
thank you.
Yes,
Thank you for
yes.
correcting me. Sorry. Games, Gender, and Coding, right?
Culture,
Culture. I'm sorry.
yes.
I'm sorry, guys.
We're all good.
Basically, I never realized, or it didn't come across when I was playing the game a couple years back when it first released, the sexism and the issues amongst the genders within this game. So upon taking our class, and looking into the game with a new set of lens, it really came to as a shock and a surprise to me that Ubisoft would not allow this intentionally, but really make the audience think and criticize it and critique it in a manner that, like, wow, I never realized this was here.
Yeah, I definitely feel the same way in that I never really noticed how sexist some of these games were until
Hmm.
like I thought about it in that way, or like I actually was introduced to it. Because honestly, if you're just playing things, and the same with watching films as well. Like it's easy to get lost in what's going on compared to like what's actually on screen. It
Hmm.
Yeah, it's very it made me distance myself a lot from it, and I never really put any thought to it. So it's nice to think about it and realize these things, considering I'm going into this field and I want to avoid hurting anyone's feelings and just being any way like that. So
What's interesting with this new set of lens that we're having towards this game is that hopefully, or like you said before, as you're pursuing this industry in the gaming industry, if you want to pursue it and if you want to pursue companies like such as Ubisoft, right, or even Treyarch, future games to come, we can use this input to open up our audience and welcome more members of genders, races, cultures to prevent this issue.
hmm, yeah, that
So that's just one of the many things that I'm thankful for of like using this kind of lens.
yeah, it's definitely like a good step in the right direction for me because when I get in, if I hope I get into that industry, but I'll be able to make better choices to not do the same things that they've done, like
Hmm.
to learn from their mistakes and evaluate everything from the outside. Because it's hard when it's hard to avoid things when you're thinking about them. It's when you naturally know what's right and wrong and what not to do is when you don't have the issues. Because I think the hardest part about those kinds of things, like about the sexism and that stuff, is just based on how our society is and
Hmm.
what we're believed to be politically correct or sexist, like not a sexist, but like a gender stereotype or something like that. It's just something we've been with that we don't even realize something's wrong.
Right. Like, you know, it's interesting. Like, we actually have the chance to prevent history from repeating itself. You know.
Exactly. Yeah, we have a chance to make things better.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like that's what, like, despite living in these times and how controversial things may get, that's like our hidden power. Just like how our video games that we play have hidden powers. You know, our
Exactly.
secret skills. You know.
Hmm. Yeah, and I guess where to go from here is I guess we should really get talking about what these issues are, and
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
and kind of dissecting how things could have been done differently, and what the issues really boil down to. So I guess the main thing we wanted to discuss in this, and it's kind of one of the main things within the game, is the skills. So I'll pull up the
Mhm.
skills for Jacob real quick just so we can introduce him. But so
There they are.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's been a while since I've seen these skills.
oh yeah, so so there's
Great time.
there's 3 different categories for skills. There's the combat, the stealth, and the ecosystem. Ecosystem's more of like how to progress further in the world, or just even have more health, do more damage, stuff like that. Like these ones over here reduce damage suffered.
Mhm.
The ones over here are you can counter shoot, stuff like that. Like just quality of life stuff, I guess.
Mhm.
And you see these little icons down here. These means that they're only available for Jacob. So these skills are within the combat and the ecosystem. Jacob is a very, I don't want to say non-stealth character, but a very like attacking, in your face, aggressive kind of character.
Combative. He's a very combative.
Thank you, Mel. I couldn't think of the word. See, as this one is mutilate, so he essentially, the more times you hit somebody, the quicker they're gonna die. It's leading into that masculine masculine idea of strength and toughness and just being able to overpower people, as well as this one over here, which is a gunslinger. It's him just being able to counter, like we said earlier, from the earlier perk up here, with a gunshot. Instead, he counters with a headshot. So it's kind of adding to that lethality, that combativeness that you spoke of, to be a more aggressive and lethal person. He's more lethal assassin than Eevee is, unfortunately, and that boils down to like the sexism of it. Is this one over here as well? Is he takes less damage? He's more tanky, male character. He can take more hits and take a beating before he actually is more affected by it.
You know, before I dive into like I wanted to add on to that because that's a great point. But like just to debunk this perk right here, it says Defense 3, like the one that you have highlighted. You would think that would be gender neutral or co-ed, you know, because it literally says takes less damage overall. Well, Jacob takes less damage overall, but I feel like that's where Ubisoft fell off. Just one of the many aspects where Ubisoft could have not fell off. I'm sorry, like put more thought into, because why wouldn't, like, even if I was to play as Eevee, right, like the female character, the female twin, or any female characters in almost any game, ideally you would want to have your defense up, your shields up, or your defense up. You know, you don't want to have like all like the strength or like all the like the attack abilities, the combative abilities, without having some type of defense. You know?
Yeah.
So I feel like, so right there, that perk alone should have more thought put into. And I'm gonna let you respond to that before I go into my next point.
Yeah, and I think you're getting on the right track here. It's that it's not that these perks exist, it's how they attach them to specific characters. If these perks could exist gender neutrally, like you said, and there would be no issue with it because it'd be customizable per your playstyle. Like You
Hmm.
you could make Evie more stealthy, or you could make her the more combative character.
Hmm.
It's that lack of choice where the issue comes in. It's because you're assigning these perks to the specific gender instead of letting the person decide how their gender wants to play.
I feel like you see how like these gender assigned perks, like the stealth, the knife. Like if you can scroll over to the stealth tree,
Yeah, of
can you
course.
do
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah. Here, let me actually. What I'm gonna do here is real quick. I'm gonna switch to Eevee,
Perfect,
and
perfect.
then I'm gonna go to our skills over here.
Yeah, look at her knifing. Oh, yeah, look at her knife throwing ability in
Hmm.
stealth. Yeah, knife master two. The one over. Can you go? Can you
Yeah, of
switch over to
course.
him?
Yep, this one. No, sorry, this one over
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah.
No,
Oh, chameleon.
Camille.
I was gonna look at
Chameleon.
chameleon
Yeah, of
stealth.
course. Go ahead. Yeah.
So basically, like those three perks, even as like a male playing as a male character, I would still like this ability. And again, I'm not trying to be biased or anything, but ideally, the issue with these perks is that it's like we touched upon, and as like we're diving into it, this is where the sexism comes into. Like, why wouldn't you want your female character to be more like to have more strength, to be the more combative one, or be as equally to the opposing gender?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Like.
These are the criticisms that game developers like Ubisoft needs to take into account. Because if you just leave your character as just to be the stealth, you're just fueling the sexism, you're fueling the problem, you're letting it happen, even if whether or not they realize it or not, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. Exactly. And I'm gonna say something regarding Assassin's Creed Unity because it was the game prior, and it was known as being this marginally sexist game that had so many things wrong with it. And on its launch, this is from Tom Phillips from Eurogamer. So this is just him quoting some quotes from Ubisoft. Um, but it says it's double the animations, it's double the voices, all that stuff, and then double the visual assets. Especially when we have customizable assassins, it was really a lot of extra production work, and that's regarding them not adding a female character into Unity. That was their reasoning to not doing it, is that it was just too much work, and I think that kind of makes it kind of shows itself within this game because it was the first one that added the female character. Is
Hmm.
that they were thinking a little too much into it, I think, and that it didn't have to be this completely different playstyle character. In a sense that it's gender based and stuff like that. Like it didn't have to be like that. It could have been neutral, and that's what they were missing.
I feel like with going that, I wouldn't even want to say like that quote unquote extra mile, because then you would automatically assume like, oh, if you're gonna say programming for female or non-male characters is like extra work, what do you mean? Like, no, that's not what I'm saying, but like having that equal sense of work, even with fictional characters, can really show almost where you stand, whether it, like I said before, whether if you know it or not, whether it was unintentional or intentional. Because hearing that Ubisoft didn't add a female assassin to Unity, like what you said before, like from that quote, that's just part of the problem. Then add more programmers, then hire more programmers, and promote programming as a whole.
Yeah.
These extra steps can not only benefit yourself, but can benefit the gaming community and even society as a whole. If we're taking ourselves out of the gaming community just for a second, you know how much publicity programming and game development can get if we promote for both genders and other genders as well?
Mm.
I just feel like it could have been more, it could have been executed far more than it already has. if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it definitely could have been executed better in the aspects of everything. I mean, everything can always be executed better, but I don't know. It's just something that was just overlooked, I believe. Like, I don't know.
To have, sorry to cut you off, Jeffrey, just to have, like, not being able to program the opposite gender because it's quote unquote too much work. I feel like as a gamer and someone who studies games, we deserve that. We invest in these companies. We trust these companies. We promote and support these companies. We essentially are these companies. Because without us, who are they going to market to, essentially?
Mm-hmm.
So, I truly feel like it's worth the investment.
I do believe so as well. Yeah, like it definitely would have paid off in Unity to add that female character and have that second character. But I mean, you learn from your mistakes and you hopefully make things better. And they took some steps in the right direction in this game, as well as the things they've done wrong. So, I guess we should move on to the next topic then, and that's we're gonna focus on how the story progresses and the sexist natures of the story, because there are some sexist ways the story comes along and things that Jacob can do that Evie doesn't and stuff along that lines. So I'm gonna start it off by reading another quote here, and it's simply from which one was it? I'm sorry. It was from Autostraddle.com, which it is from Heather Hogan is the author, and this is the quote: "Forcing the first female playable character in Assassin's Creed into a romantic storyline that takes over her characterization and causes a rift between her and Jacob is crazy making. The unchanging built-in dialogue in the final quest includes Jacob scoffing at Evie about chasing the Shroud of Eden around London and flirting all day with Henry, while he's been running the city of Templars and Blighters, which assumes you've been playing most of the open world as Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
But in turn from that, you can play almost the entire game as Evie besides the Jacob-specific missions. So it doesn't take that playstyle in regard at all. It almost assumes that you played Jacob the entire game, and it ties her into this romantic relationship just for that plot point to arise later in the game.
Interesting.
So it's one of those things that it didn't need to happen. Like,
Right.
it didn't need to be a plot point so much as it just being a kind of side thing or a love interest. Because regardless, she didn't need a love interest. No character needs a love interest in every game, because there's different kinds of games. There's different styles of games. There doesn't always need to be a love interest. Jacob, for example, doesn't have one. He doesn't have a blatant love interest that he has in the game. Evie's is very front and center. She flirts with Henry most of the game, who is another assassin. She's flirting with Henry and bringing him things or doing missions together. She almost always needs Henry to join her along in her missions, as if she needs the Mal Overlook in all of her missions. So it adds to this very gender-specific, like, category. It's very kind of not unsettling, but like questionable. Like, why?
If I may reference Assassin's Creed, not the storyline, but the franchise itself for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
So not to derail from Syndicate, but just I want to make a point about the Assassin's Creed franchise on that note. Since we're talking about sexism, right, within the game, I find it a bit hypocritical that this is being taken place with not only in this game, but as a whole in this franchise. So what do I mean by that? again, I'm not trying to derail from the game itself, but previous Assassin's Creed games, I think in Black Flag, I don't know about in any other future games after this, basically, your main assassin was able to blend in with female dancers, female entertainers, female prostitutes, and now this is like a hypocrisy of like one of these characters is calling out their twin, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So what my point is that I sense like a bit of hypocrisy within like the male toxicity within this game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's all created from the same company. Do you understand? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense, Bob.
So, all in all, like I feel that Ubisoft contradicts itself like within its game, or at least in the Assassin's Creed franchise, at least. And Syndicate is a prime example of that. You have your twins battling each other, bickering with each other, having the male twin, Jacob, belittle his sister, Evie, about, having a quote-unquote romantic relationship, flirting with, like, Henry. But yet, Jacob's able to blend in with female prostitutes in the game, and other male Assassin's Creed characters within the franchise are able to blend in within prostitutes, female prostitutes within their era. So right there, as a whole, it's a bit hypocritical, and that's just another aspect that this game, this company needs to fix.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And going back to kind of talking about this game and that romantic relationship and all that, it's very odd that he doesn't have a romantic relationship. I know I mentioned it already, but he doesn't seem to have one whatsoever. I mean, at least to someone playing the main stories and going along with the main game, there's nothing that exists. Like, she spends almost all of her missions, at least some way affecting Henry, gathering things for each other, giving each other flowers and stuff like that. There's even the collectibles within the game that Evie collects. I mean, you can collect them as Jacob too, but they're almost a flirtation device for Henry. Like, they're instigated to bring him. They're pressed flowers is what they are. So it's just one of those things that
I don't understand why. Sorry to cut you off, but I just don't understand why. If that was the issue, then all it could have been solved was just to give both characters, both twins, equal skill sets, because then it reverts back to the skill trees. Like, notice how all the stealth missions have to have, like, you have to have a stealth of this tree and this perk, and then you can't enter the combat missions, at least not without Jacob. You know what I mean? If that was the issue, then give both twins, both characters, the same abilities. Stop diverging them. Stop separating them. You know?
Yeah. And I've got another quote here from this one's from Anita Sarkeesian. Sorry, and it's about Assassin's Creed Syndicate when the game came out and it was reviewed. Just discusses how Jacob has the larger focus in the story and all that. So it says, sadly, as the larger story unfolds, Jacob's narrative dominates, meaning that if players don't actively choose to play as Evie in side missions, they don't engage with her very often. It's frustrating that the story focuses increasingly on Jacob as it approaches the end, not only having the twins be truly equal protagonists, not only because having the twins be truly equal protagonists would have been rare and significant, but also because Evie is easily more the compelling of the two. So, as this reviewer states, the game focuses primarily on Jacob, and no matter if you play side missions as Evie, just as the last person said, the outcome is primarily based on Jacob and his story throughout the entire game. The only references to Evie's story are when you play her missions, as well as when he's bickering with her regarding Henry.
Hmm.
So it's just another issue with the game that they could have went a kind of gender neutral way and told an equal story for both sides, but they had to do separate stories for both characters. So
It's interesting how the hypocrisy works in this game. Saying that, like you said before, like, or you and the reviewer basically saying that, oh, at the end of the game, yeah, we're equal, yeah, but you know that's not the case based off of the gameplay.
yes.
So I feel one way what game developers can do to fix this is that it's possibly giving more of a like extending the story, basically
Mhm.
giving more opportunities to both genders or both. I'm sorry, excuse me, both characters is what I meant. So, for instance, like how you mentioned before, like the stealth, there wasn't much stealth missions than combat missions because that's what most of the majority of the story is combat, and as we already established, that's Jacob's missions basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So decrease the amount of missions for Jacob and give the ability of combat to Evie, thus solving the problem.
I told you to make an appointment.
Yeah,
At least,
My schedule
at
is
least
open.
one way.
it definitely
Obviously,
needed to
many
focus equally on both, and I know there was that choice if we wanted to play in the open world and the side missions, but
Hmm.
Internal
they definitely
combustion.
needed to, like you said, extend the game and put more thought into both characters to where she wasn't just a plot point for Jacob.
We're talking about the main story, and I'll
Yep.
get back to that point. Yeah.
I'll need a second train to pull this
Yeah.
off.
And that's just one of those things that
Just
could have
the
been
man.
avoided.
So we
Another thing in this game is
Unfortunately, I
the
like you. Miss that away.
I had one thing here that I wanted to say. Is the box art of the game. Like even when the game was released to the not released, but like the box cover was released for the thing. Even in the marketing,
Hmm.
in the front and the cover of the game, Jacob is front and center. Evie is off to the right side, as well as random characters on the left side. So it's even on the front of the game, already stating that she is second to him. He's the main character. He's facing the screen. He's right in front. And that's another issue with how they marketed the game, and it kind of leads into how they treated the game too, because that's exactly how the game comes off, is that Jacob feels like the main point, where Evie's just kind of that side character that you can play as. And as we talked about those flowers a little bit ago, here's actually one right over here. Let me grab it real quick. Where is it at? There it is. So you literally can find pressed flowers around the place that you can bring to Henry. But yeah, it's very odd that they chose to put him front and center instead of making them both the centerpiece of the game.
Is it possible right now to pull that up? Like, can you press start and is it in like one of the? Yeah, this works. This works for now. So something like this off to the right hand side,
I
where
think
it's under.
this right here is actually only because we're playing as Jacob, so this isn't like thing. But this is similar to what the cover art looks like. For the
Yeah,
game.
that was yeah. That's what
Let's
I'm getting
see
here.
here.
It's interesting. It's interesting because they say that your eyes are focused to the center image, and that center image is basically Jacob on the cover, basically.
Mhm.
And it's like almost for anybody who knows what the cover looks like right now, for just argument's sake, you can see that like you said before, Jacob's in front and center basically,
Mhm.
just like all the other Rooks and Evie and Henry, I believe. But just off of that point, it's almost as if like it's like a tree basically. Jacob is like the main tree itself, like I think not the stump, but like the stalk of the tree, basically the bulk of the tree, and Evie's just like another branch. Like she branches of her twin brothers. I guess life and story, and I guess what they could have is that's probably like a bad analogy. Forgive me for that, but basically what they could have done is that the placement of the artwork of the cover art, they could have had them both placed back to back, showing them that they're equal.
Exactly. They could have been back to back, or just even side by side instead of center and side. Just anything like that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. And I actually had a quote from one of these articles as well here that was discussing this, and it is from Forbes. It's Eric Kane. He said, "So why is it that Ubisoft has placed Jacob front and center while Evie is relegated to the side, like the many supporting characters in the picture? Why is this? It's quite simple, really. The sexism of economics. So, it's just the way it's just kind of the way it is kind of what he's saying. Like it's just sexist, and it's sexist because of the way we are and the way everything is. It's only like that because Jacob's gonna sell more copies than Evie is, because they believe there's more male gamers that play this game than there are female gamers. So
You see, so that type of, I want to say mentality, or like display, I guess, like a better word or something, is why it's like counterintuitive to our point, you know? I feel that if they want to have more copies sold, careful, you're about to die right now.
I know. I'm trying to get this carriage. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I just wanted to say that, like, if you wanted to fix the issue about, like, oh, if you want more copies sold, if you want more audience members, if you want to see an increase of sales, then I guess it reverts back to the point where fix the issues at hand. You know?
Yes.
What that means is that if the issue is sexism, and I don't expect this to be solved in like a day or like another Assassin's Creed game, you know? It's gonna take time to debunk this. I understand that. But generally, if you wanna see more of an increase in sales, an increase of positive criticism, you'd want to target where you're lacking, where the quote-unquote offensive content's coming from. And again, what we established is the sexism. So then again, like to our other points throughout this Let's Play, fix the skill trees, fix the missions, fix the dialogue between the characters, create an open storyline where both characters are welcomed within each other's lives, within each other's missions, and ultimately, I know they joke around the characters get along with each other, but ultimately respect each other, you know?
Yeah.
Because this can give someone incentive to mistreat their twin sister, their friend, their female friend, or females in general, and any other people who identify as non-male.
There's one. Sorry to interrupt you here, Mo, but within this game, they've actually. That's one of the positives about this game too, is that there are some different characters. Like there is a transgender character, and Henry is non-white. So they did take good steps in moving towards getting away from the male-dominated games, the white male-dominated games, even in the aspects that they didn't treat them differently, regardless of the history of it and how they actually would have treated a transgender or a non-white person in England during this time period. No one looks down on that character or treats them differently. They're treated as normal people. Like here, it actually is Ned, who is the transgender, and it's actually came out in one of the articles I read too, I actually didn't quote
Let me tell you about the
it or
job.
mention it, but they talk about Ned being transgender because obviously it's a person not being their. Okay, I don't want to be anything offensive here or anything, but it's
Miller's pulling a lot of cargo there.
a female being a
Sure
male.
to make the transfer.
Obviously,
Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. This character right here and the one that you just read right now, that's Ned, am I right?
that's Ned. Yes, sorry, I don't want to offend anybody or anything by saying what I'm saying, but it's definitely someone that identifies as differently than what they are. So there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. And that character exists in the game with no issues whatsoever. That everyone respects them in the game, and there's no questioning her at any point. You know, like, so it's refreshing to see that in the game.
I mean, that does give you some hope, but again, as a consumer, like I totally understand that, and you are right. Again, those are just like the baby steps
Yeah.
that the game developers are taking.
And that's what I think this game is too. Is it's the step in the right direction, even though it has so many things wrong with it still. So it has all these issues, and it
I agree.
has the sexism, but they were moving in the right direction when they made this game. So,
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is during the Victorian era.
this is during it's like the 1890-ish, I believe, in England. Yeah.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
So let me see. So let me pause it real quick just so I can pull up the other quote I have here, because this is regarding what the game did correctly. So this is from Justin Andres from GameSkinny.com, and they say that it succeeds in much the same way that Mad Max Fury Road did this summer, in that it provides a lot of different female characters with lots of different personalities and character traits. In doing so, Syndicate takes a lot of pressure off of Evie with the sole representative of her sex in the narrative. So there is a lot of existence of female characters in the game, which aids in it moving in the right direction, like it taking that female character being an oddity in the game out of the picture, as she has others surrounding her. So it definitely moves in the right direction, towards that. So
Can you remind me in the audience who are watching this, what year did this game come out? Syndicate?
when it came out, so 5 years ago. I think it was 2015 it came out, if I'm not mistaken.
Just to be safe, 2014, 2015.
Yeah,
something like
2014,
that.
2015, yeah.
Okay. Do you feel that Ubisoft and the game, like Assassin's Creed franchise, have been doing a better job in fixing issues overall? Not just with Syndicate, but other Assassin's Creed that followed it?
I'm sorry, Mel. I couldn't hear you over the game, actually. What were you saying?
It's okay.
Loud.
All good. All I said was that looking at it through a whole, the franchise, the Assassin's Creed franchise, and even Ubisoft, since 2014, 2015, do you feel that Ubisoft has fixed issues like sexism within Assassin's Creed games?
Playing the most recent game, Odyssey, I do believe so, yes. Within that game, there are no gender-specific perks. You can play as a male or a female character. It's a brother or sister, again, within that game.
Nice. Looking forward to that.
That has no effect on the story whatsoever. It's unique. You play through that character, and you can interact and favor any character you want. You can interact with women, men. It's your choice when you want to play the game. There's no sexist nature. Nobody says anything to you about what choices you make or anything like that. If you sleep with a man or female, there's nothing wrong with either choice you make. There's nothing that tells you which way to go, which way to not. So it's nice in that aspect. So yeah, I do believe they made very good progress in the right direction.
That's good to hear because after playing this game, I waited some time, and I don't know if we have time to talk about this, but I would like to go into the fact that there's a DLC for this game. Do we have time for that?
We're already about 40 minutes now, though. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say we probably should skip over that and just talk about our last thing, which is the enemy types in the game, because we didn't really go over that too much. But
That's fine.
yeah, so with the last thing we wanted to talk about in the game then is the enemy types. So there are specific enemy types almost based on gender within the game that oops, I want to be on the other side of this, but it's okay. There are males that are classified as like these they're brutes almost, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Brutes.
Mhm.
They're very aggressive. They take a lot of hits, a lot of damage, and oops. They're very in your face. Don't really take anything from a distance, and a distance, and they're up close constantly. The female characters that are the role specific ones, they're snipers. They sit off in afar. They do high damage, but they're very fragile. They don't take a lot of hits. They're very, I guess, glass cannon-esque, as most games call high damage dealing glass cannons. So
Mhm.
yeah,
I do remember. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I do remember seeing those types of enemies. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the higher you level up, or the lower you were, basically the tougher the enemies were. So for instance, I remember there was one female enemy that was like a level 1, and then like there was like a level 5 brute, male brute, all decked out in armor or extra layers of clothing, and had a gun on them, basically a pistol. And that just shows the difference between enemies, the sexism between enemies as you progress through the game. And you don't often see at least a female enemy more combative and more assertive within the game, which is again counterintuitive to the point.
yeah. Yeah, I guess I don't know. I get they didn't need to make them gender specific based on their role. I guess is where that could have been fixed or kind of avoided the way they handled it. So
I wanted, when you were on like going through this gameplay right now, when you were like defending Ned, quote unquote, you passed by some of your gang members, the Rooks, and there was one specific gang member. I think you can find him on the train right over here. He was like big, white, bald, basically, obviously displaying muscles, lacking intelligence, right, quote unquote.
yeah, the tough guy, like
The brute, the tough guy, right even here, like right here.
this is just a regular enemy type, the standard enemy type. I want to see if I can find a brute. No, I don't even see any. There's nothing. There's none on the train, but they're actually bald and they're like they're very buff looking, masculine, have weight to them.
Pretty much, yeah. Like obviously muscles are showing and everything, but you don't have that. My point being is that you don't have that for any of the female characters for X, Y, and Z reason, and you don't have. And even if you want to portray, even if the game developers wanted to portray that for their enemy characters. Notice how the higher level enemies are again male, again dressed more eloquently more, if I may say, and ultimately have a pistol, but yet the female enemies yet again, they don't have that.
They have rifles, or they have.
But they are still a low-level rifle, sniper,
Mhm.
basically.
Yeah.
Which is, again, another aspect of the sexism in the game,
Yeah.
thus implying X, Y, and Z. I'm going to leave that to the audience imagination. I think I
Um,
pretty much made my point.
Yeah, and as many things as this game does towards sex, like does sexistly and has the issues it has, it was a gigantic leap in the right direction for adding these types of characters to games, because generally these characters didn't exist, like someone like Ned or Henry over here, as well as just having a female protagonist in a game. It was very rare to come by, and now we're starting to finally see more of it nowadays. But it's very it was very good to see progress, as much as they still got wrong within this. So I guess that's where we're gonna end it for this then, Hummo.
Unfortunately,
Now that we're at like a 45 plus minutes, a little over the time, but I think that's kind of due to the fact that we have 2 people instead of 1. So
no worries.
yeah, I think we got through most we said. I hope I didn't offend anyone or anything, because
Absolutely
my
not. We're
description
just
for Ned.
just gamers who are just trying to better the world, better the community.
Just trying to think better as people.
Ultimately, yep.
All right, Mo. Well, it was a beautiful talk.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Of course. Have a good one, Mo.
You too.